Last Christmas Day, my dad called everyone into the living room. He had that special, glowing smile, the one he reserved only for my brother. Alex stood beside him, chest puffed out, already basking in the attention. For my son, my dad boomed, his voice thick with pride. My legacy. The future of this family. He handed Alex a small, elegantly wrapped box. Alex made a show of tearing the paper. Inside, on a bed of blue velvet, gleamed a single, shiny brass key. A murmur of recognition swept the room. It was the key to our family's lake cabin, a symbol of summers, of belonging, of heritage. The room erupted in applause, backslaps, and cheers for Alex. Then, as the noise died down, my dad turned. His eyes landed on me. The proud light in his eyes didn't just fade, it changed into something worse, amusement. Like I was a setup for his punchline. He reached behind his armchair, not for another wrapped gift, but for a plain, heavy, galvanized metal bucket. It clunked as he set it on the floor. Then he picked it up and placed it right into my arms, forcing me to take its weight. It was filled with cheap sponges, giant bottles of generic bleach, and a pair of bright yellow rubber gloves. And for Anna, he announced, his laugh loud and performative. Your gift is the privilege of getting the place ready for all of us this summer. Somebody's got to do the real work. The room exploded with laughter again, this time at my expense. My arms shook from the bucket's weight, but the heavier load was the humiliation crushing my chest. The cruelty wasn't just in the gift. It was in the details. The key was presented on velvet. My bucket was raw, cold metal. His gift was about ownership and future. Mine was about service and labor. My mom flinched, her eyes starting to me for a second before fixing on the carpet, unable to hold my gaze. My aunt patted my shoulder, still chuckling. Oh, honey, you're always so good at that sort of thing. Alex dangled the key from his finger, swinging it back and forth like a pendulum of victory, his smirk telling me he knew he'd won forever. I stood there, a statue of shame, my smile a frozen, painful rictus. Inside, I was disintegrating. Let me be clear, this wasn't a one-time joke. It was the public culmination of a lifetime of being second best. My name is Anna. To my father, I was not a legacy. I was logistics. My twin brother, Alex, was the golden child, charismatic, reckless, and celebrated for mere potential. I was the planner, the quiet one who actually remembered birthdays, who sent thank you notes, who kept the family calendar. My dad called him a natural leader. He called me reliable. It was a compliment that always felt like a consolation prize. For 8 years, I've been a paralegal at Sterling and Pierce. I built a career on competence, not charm. But in my father's eyes, Alex's flashy but failed business ventures were bold swings, while my steady paycheck and clean apartment were evidence of a lack of ambition. The bucket was just the physical proof of what he'd always thought. My role was to support Alex's story, never to have my own. The days after that Christmas were a fog of quiet despair. I replayed the scene constantly. The worst part was realizing no one had defended me. Not one person said, "That's not funny, that's cruel." Their laughter meant they agreed with my assigned role. I stopped hoping for a change. I stopped trying to earn a respect that was never meant for me. Instead, I poured every ounce of myself into my work. At Sterling and Pierce, I was assigned to a complex land dispute case with Mr. Sterling. Here, my attention to detail was valued, not mocked. Here, I wasn't, just the helper. I was the expert they relied on to find the missing piece. In January, the calls started. My dad and Alex, buzzing with plans for their cabin. A new boat dock. A stone fire pit. A bigger deck for parties. Their conversations were full of we and ours. I was never part of the we. My role was confirmed when Dad called me. Anna, we'll need the place deep cleaned before we start construction. I put you down for the first weekend in May. It wasn't a request. It was an order. A reminder of my place. That night, staring at my silent apartment wall, a spark of rebellion ignited. Why did I accept this? What if the story of this land wasn't the story they told? At work the next day, a quiet fury fueled me. During my lunch break, I accessed the county property database. I pulled up the deed for the cabin land. I saw my grandparents' names, Walter and Irene. The legal description was a wall of confusing text, referencing a survey from 1972 and landmarks I'd never seen. A stone marker at the northwest corner. A blighted oak as a point of reference. We had a chain-link fence covered in vines. We had pine trees. We had no stone marker. A cold, professional suspicion took root in my gut. Something was wrong. The more I read, the angrier I became. This wasn't just about a cruel Christmas gift. It was about a lifetime of being told my version of reality was less important. My dad and Alex's loud, confident version of the world always won. But what if they were wrong? What if the facts on paper told a different story? I spent hours in the county's digital archive, my heart pounding with a new, unfamiliar sense of purpose. This wasn't for them. This was for me. To prove, if only to myself, that I wasn't the fool they thought I was. When I finally found the faded 1972 survey scan, my breath caught. The lines were faint but clear. Our property line didn't stop at the old fence. It continued west, following a gentle curve along the lakeshore for what looked like another 60 feet or more. The fence was inside the property, not on its edge. All those years, we'd been playing on only half our land. The valuable half, the flat, open, waterfront half, was left wild, dismissed as someone else's thicket. The injustice burned. They'd not only made me a servant, they'd been ignorant kings, unaware of their own kingdom's true borders. I hired the surveyor, Mr. Gibbs, with my own money. It felt like the first truly independent act of my life. I wasn't asking for permission. I wasn't telling my family. This was my investigation. When he confirmed the discrepancy weeks later, I didn't feel joy. I felt a deep, resonant vindication. They were wrong. They had always been wrong. Their certainty was arrogance. My quiet observation had uncovered a truth their bluster never could. The useless thicket was the crown jewel. Then I remembered the final, personal twist of the knife, my inheritance from Grandma Irene. She was the only one who saw me. When she died, her will specified I was to receive a parcel of the family's recreational land, not to exceed 1 acre, to be chosen by the executor. My father, the executor, drove me out there. He pointed to a steep, rocky, sunless patch far from the water, covered in scrub brush. That's your acre, Anna. It's not much, but it's fair. His tone was dismissive. He gave me the literal worst land on the property and called it fair. The memory of that day, paired with the new survey, made me physically shake. It wasn't just neglect. It was a deliberate act of diminishment. I obtained a copy of Grandma's will. The language was beautifully vague. It didn't specify which acre my father had chosen. But what if, based on the incorrect survey he relied on, he had mistakenly identified the acre? What if the useless thicket was the actual, legal 1 acre parcel? The plan that formed was not about greed. It was about correcting an error. It was about claiming what was legally, and perhaps morally, meant to be mine from the moment my gentle grandmother put pen to paper. She wanted to give me a place of my own. He made sure it was a place no one would want. My meeting with the property attorney, Paula, was pivotal. She reviewed the documents, her expression shifting from professional interest to something like outrage on my behalf. Anna, this is profoundly unfair, she said, pointing to the will and then the survey. The executor's choice appears based on a fundamental error. This new survey redefines everything. You may have been gifted the most valuable land on the lot without anyone knowing. For the first time, someone with authority was calling it unfair. It was a balm on a wound I thought would never heal. We decided to file a quiet title action. It was a legal process to make the record reflect reality. Paula advised discretion. Let them have their illusion until the last possible moment, she said. I agreed. I wanted the truth to arrive with the force of law, not the sound of an argument. I wanted my father to be confronted not by his emotional daughter, but by an indisputable fact he could not laugh away or dismiss. We would file just after the new year, a new beginning enforced by a court stamp. The following months were an exercise in silent endurance. At family barbecues, I listened to Alex and my dad talk about the cabin's soaring market value, about developers circling. They were so sure of their impending windfall. They talked about sports cars and vacations. They never once looked at me and thought, her rocky acre is part of this equation. I was so invisible to their future plans, it was as if my inheritance didn't exist. Their greed and their disregard were the perfect fuel for my resolve. Thanksgiving was a masterpiece of irony. My dad held court, talking about the legacy asset and his smart stewardship. Alex nodded like a crown prince. I passed the rolls and said nothing. Inside, I held my secret knowledge like a shield. They were celebrating the value of the land they thought they had, while I sat there knowing the true value was quietly, legally, slipping from their grasp and into mine. They were boasting about a kingdom that was already half lost. When the developer's formal offer came in December, their excitement was nauseating. It was a life-changing sum. They high-fived. They made plans to split it down the middle. The fact that I owned a separate, legal parcel within that property did not even cross their minds. My father, the executor of an estate that included my land, didn't think to consult me. In their eyes, I was not a co-owner. I was an afterthought. This final, breathtaking oversight was the last straw. It proved they saw me not as a person with rights, but as a function, the cleaner, the helper, the irrelevant daughter. The quiet title action was filed on December 27th. The legal papers were served on my father at his office on the 30th. I pictured him opening the envelope, his confident grin faltering as he read the cold, formal language that challenged his authority and his narrative. I didn't have to imagine his call. It came that evening, a torrent of sputtering rage. Is this a joke? Are you trying to sabotage us? For years, I'd flinched at that tone. This time, I felt nothing but calm. It's not a joke, Dad. It's a survey. Read it. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic for their plans. The developer retracted his offer. The dream windfall evaporated. My father and Alex were forced to hire a lawyer who then had to explain to them the embarrassing, expensive truth. Their knowledge of their own land was flawed. The cabin was nice, but the gold was in the title they had carelessly, thoughtlessly, and perhaps maliciously assigned to me years ago. The humiliation was now theirs. The laughter was silent, but it was real. The New Year's Day family meeting was held in the same living room. The air was different now, charged with panic and fury instead of festive cruelty. My dad looked shrunken. Alex was vibrating with anger. "You're stealing from your own family," he shouted. I didn't shout back. I laid the surveyor's report on the coffee table, next to the spot where I'd received the bucket. "I'm not stealing," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I'm accepting the acre Grandma left me. You just never knew where it actually was. You gave me what you thought was worthless. That was your mistake." My father's argument collapsed into sputtering about intent and family spirit. But intent doesn't move property lines. Spirit doesn't trump a legal deed. His lawyer, A neutral party advised them to settle. Fighting me would be long, public, and they would lose. The legal truth was a wall they could not shout down. The power dynamics in the room had permanently, silently shifted. The person with the cleaning supplies now held the deed. In the weeks that followed, the developer contacted me directly. His offer for my single acre of pristine waterfront was staggering, more than the original offer for the entire, incorrect parcel. The poetic justice was absolute. The useless thicket was now the only thing of value. I listened politely and said I'd consider it. But I already knew I wouldn't sell. This wasn't about money anymore. I used a portion of my savings to clear the land. Not to build a trophy home to shove in their faces, but to build a small, peaceful studio. A place of light and calm with windows facing the sunrise over the lake. It was everything the old, dark cabin wasn't. It was mine, chosen for me by my grandmother's love and secured by my own quiet perseverance. When it was finished, I sat on the porch, the silence broken only by the lapping of water. The old cabin across the property line looked small and sad. My father and Alex have never visited. The family gatherings are quieter now, strained. The unspoken truth of the land sits between us. But the weight is gone from my shoulders. I don't dread the holidays anymore. I don't wait for his approval. I realize now that the greatest cruelty wasn't the bucket, it was being taught to believe that my worth was determined by his perception. I had to unlearn that. Sometimes, on summer evenings, I walked down to the old stone marker by the water's edge, the one from the 1972 survey that everyone had forgotten. I put my hand on its cool, rough surface. It was there all along, holding the truth in place while my family built their stories on a mistake. The new year brought a new map, not just of the land, but of my life. They gave my brother a key and me a bucket. But in the end, I was the one who unlocked the truth. And the view from my own land, the land they never valued, is more beautiful than I ever could have imagined.